Okay, I think I rediscovered what is now one of my favorite movies, like ever. But it's not how I remembered it at all. And I can almost assure you, if you haven't seen these movies in 2 decades or so, you're probably going to feel the same way. So let's put on our Sunday best and rewatch the Brady Bunch movie and a very Brady sequel.
Oh, Mike, why?
The Brady Bunch movie offers a unique plot where this sweet and innocent family live, act, and dress like they're in the 1970s when really they're living in the more cynical 1990s. In other words, they're the Brady Bunch as you know them, ignorant to how harsh the world really is. Kind of how, like, if you were watching the series in the 70s, it felt like a calmer, more wholesome version to what was really going on outside the Brady's house. And this movie sure sets it up that way also, with aerial and street views of modern day 1990s Los Angeles that depict the era with no smoking signs and smog checks and gang war riots, and even a greedy property developer that wants to knock down the Brady's neighborhood to build a shopping mall. So 90s. The Bradys, however, are the only family in the neighborhood who won't agree to sell their house.
Well, there's this one family that's holding out.
What's this story?
Here's the story.
However, it backfires on them because we learn the Bradys didn't pay their taxes and now they owe the IRS
$20,000 by the end of the week, or they'll auction our house.
$20,000?
And while this is the main premise of the movie, the film diverts in many different subplots that reference the series in parody. And this is something I didn't realize until watching this film 20 years later, is that this film is a parody of the original series. And before some of you go, duh, when you're watching this as a kid, it's kind of difficult to pick up on that. And I'm not the only one. I actually found a Reddit thread of so many people who didn't realize these movies were parodies of the series. I also thought I remembered it as a kid's movie, but it's totally not. It's really made for Gen X and alike to reminisce the days of watching the Bradys in the 70s and be able to laugh at the ridiculousness and satire of it. I mean, we have Greg decked out in 60s attire, and Marsha looked like she just stepped out of a coloring book, while everyone else is in more sad and dull gray. Is this what the 90s were like? I thought the 90s were great. Greg is driving a 1972 station wagon, and they, along with the Bradys, are just totally oblivious to their 90s surroundings, apparently.
Hey there, groovy chick.
You can also see it in their home, which hasn't changed much. The Brady Bunch house is decked out in the classic orange and brown wallpaper and decor. And inside the not-so-timeless kitchen, we see Carol Brady load her coffee with sugar. But this movie isn't implying that she's going to get diabetes. It's one of the many references to the original series. It's actually the first scene.
It's the first time I ever saw you take 21 spoons of sugar.
There are countless references to the series that may go right over your head unless you watched it.
Tiger. Whatever happened to that dog?
Tiger was the Brady's dog who disappeared after season 2, and there was really no explanation. And these references, big and small, carry out in nearly every scene. However, while these films are parodies of the series, it's done very tastefully and smart. It's not making fun of the show as much as it is a love letter to the Brady Bunch. And the reason why it works so well is not only the clever, tongue-in-cheek dialogue, but the actors who portray them.
Greg, Marsha, Peter, Jan, Bobby, Cindy.
The iconic family has a new cast, but the resemblances and the impersonations are pretty spot on and uncanny. Most notably, we have Gary Cole, who pretty much sounds exactly like Mike Brady from the original series. Christine Taylor plays Marsha Brady and resembles Maureen McCormick so well, you kind of just think it's her. And the actors not only represent their characters, but successfully put their own spin on them. For example, new Marsha's line,
"Oh sure, Jan,"
is not even a quote from the series, but it's pretty much stapled in pop culture memes today. Shelley Long does not just mimic Carol Brady, but kind of creates her own version of Carol, even if it is kind of just an airhead.
$20,000? There has to be a mix-up.
The standout performer in this movie, though, for me, is Jennifer Elise Cox, who plays Jan. Her performance here is so unique and hilarious.
Glasses make me look positively goofy.
What does that even mean? Marsha's an airhead who's obsessed with herself. Jan is insecure and suffering from middle child syndrome.
Why does Marsha get all the trophies?
Cindy is a tattletale.
I'm not a snitch.
Greg is a player.
Do I look like a yellow fuzzy baby bird too?
Peter is going through puberty.
He's worse than Marsha.
Bobby is, I don't know, he's just kind of there. But what makes their personalities so great is that they're either poking fun at how we depicted them, or they're plucked straight from storylines from the series. For example, Greg is just this wannabe player, but in the original series, he's kind of the older brother who's just clearly trying to come off as a little bit too cool.
What is it, Cindy? I'm busy writing a song for Danielle.
Cindy is a tattletale in this movie, which references the 1970 episode called Tattletale. Jan is jealous of Marsha this whole movie, even though, fun fact, Eve Plum only said Marsha, Marsha, Marsha once in the original series. You'd think it's a recurring catchphrase of hers based on how iconic it is for Jan, but really you gotta give it to Eve Plum for such a fantastic, memorable delivery that's now being heavily parodied in this movie.
Marsha, Marsha, Marsha!
What's done so well also is that their nuances and personality traits help advance the plot forward. As the kids are discussing how to make 20 grand to save their beloved home, Marsha's line,
But Jan, you don't have any friends.
keeps Jan up at night, leading to a scene that I had totally forgotten about until now, where she is, first of all, dreaming, but also completely unhinged and cutting off all of Marsha's hair, to which it backfires because she does a good job and further reinforces her jealousy for her sister. At least we have RuPaul, who's playing Mrs. Cummings as the school's guidance counselor, to diagnose Jan not with paranoid schizophrenia for hearing voices in her head, but instead middle child syndrome.
Girl, you better work.
Well, Jan has some reason to be jealous in this movie. Her sister Marsha kinda just has it all. She has a lesbian friend who's obsessed with her.
Oh, guess what? My mom said I can sleep over.
Her biggest problem in life is choosing between a date with Charlie or the big man on campus.
Big man on campus, huh?
Which leads to her most well-known scene when she gets hit in the face with a football and her nose swells up to the size of a foot.
I look awful.
It's not your nose I'm after.
Anyway, the Brady kids are at a loss with getting this $20,000. But it's okay, because Mike thinks that he sold one of his designs and is getting a $20,000 cash advance.
So let's celebrate. Put on your Sunday best, kids. We're going to Sears.
And it's even better now because of the current state of Sears. Back in the 90s, Sears was the place to go. If you weren't getting your t-shirts at Sears, where are you getting them? Nowadays, the company is bankrupt, and it actually looks like there's only 13 stores in existence anymore. So this film is such a great time capsule from the perspective of looking back from the 2020s, probably just how it was watching it in the 1990s and looking back into the 70s. And at Sears, of course, they're singing and dancing to their iconic song, Sunshine Day. And I swear, this family could save this franchise and brand of Sears if only they sang Sunshine Day in every store. I mean, I would go to Sears to see this. They check themselves out in a 90s display of TVs, and you have to wonder why until you see them coordinated just like the theme song of the show. God, this movie is great. The way it's able to capture the references so creatively is what makes this top tier comedy. Well, the family is alerted now that Mike is not getting the 20 grand cash advance he thought he was from his really bad design.
I guess this means it's over.
And Marsha says they should enter the Search for the Stars contest.
We can enter that Search for the Stars contest.
Even though Jan already suggested that.
Do I not have a voice? I had that idea 2 days ago. Stop being so selfish, Jan.
Come on, Jan.
Oh, Jan.
Jan.
Poor Jan. And this contest is, of course, offering 20 grand. What high school competition is offering this amount of money for a singing competition and being judged by the monkeys? Well, then Mike and Carol decide to have one last bang in their bedroom.
Why, Grandpa Brady,
And Jan is so pissed that she announces she's running away and runs away in her afro wig. And this is where we get a great cameo from the show, Ann B. Davis.
Sounds like some family misses somebody they love very much.
It's great when you have a reboot of a classic and are able to get a cameo from the original cast, because it's almost like a stamp of approval and a way to feed our nostalgic hunger. So Jan is saved, and we're back to the Search for the Stars competition. And now they're singing a classic, Keep on Dancing. And just as they're being evicted with an auction for their house, they win the $20,000.
The Brady Bunch?
Good job, Brady's.
And now we can stay in our house after all.
To end this movie, we have one more cameo that I totally forgot about until I rewatched this. Florence Henderson, the OG Carol Brady, is now starring as the Brady grandmother. She's decked out, however, in more 90s clothing, which is a great attention to detail type of thing in terms of like, hey, the original Carol is keeping up with the times. Not only is she modern, but somehow she cures the voices in Jan's head.
You loser.
Jan, cut the crap.
I believe this film is comedy gold. While again, it's best appreciated probably for those who have seen the original series and understand their references, it was absolutely entertaining, plays homage successfully, and has 2 cameos from the OGs. Thankfully, this whole cast returns for the even more chaotic and unhinged A Very Brady sequel. So this movie opens up and takes you right in. Explorers are uncovering this valuable horse statue, and it's being auctioned off in present day, and a replica sits at the Brady's house. Especially watching both these films back to back, this sequel carries the same vibe and aesthetic, even with 2 different directors. This film remains really detailed in the sense that some things aren't even said, but kind of like an if you know thing. Like in the first movie, for example, you see pork chops and applesauce on the kitchen blackboard. In this movie, you may see a bowl of lemons on Jan's bathroom counter, which again is a nod to certain storylines and phrases from the OG. What makes this one a bit different though is there's more assumption references. And by that I mean how some viewers in the 70s may have read a tension between Marsha and Greg that may or may not have really been there. It now becomes this strange storyline of borderline incest. And sadly enough, the incest storyline is what I remember most from this sequel. Because first, Greg tells Marsha he's moving into the attic, but Marsha instead wants the attic, so they deal it out with a game of Jenga cards. Their game results in a different outcome. They're instead both going to
Share the attic?
What's gonna happen in that attic? A man knocks on the door and claims he's Carol's ex-husband. He went missing at sea on an expedition, to which the House of Cards symbolically falls. There's a lot of family conflict in this particular movie that is more complex than just Jan suffering middle child syndrome. And it's good and bad, because we're given some situations that may in fact break this unbreakable family. Fun fact, in the original series, it was never mentioned what actually happened to Carol's first husband. The creator wanted her to be divorced, but the network wanted her to be widowed because they thought divorce may be too risque for the times. What was going on in the 70s? Were people not getting divorced? Or should I say now, what is going on in the 2020s? So in this movie, Roy apparently got lost at sea, and it's a clever way of reinforcing the fact that we never actually knew what happened to Carol's first husband. And why doesn't Carol recognize him? Well, his face got stomped on by an elephant, so he got reconstructive surgery, and his height got stretched by being tortured on a rack. Normal things when you get lost at sea. I mean, come on. Even though we later learn he's an imposter, clearly, Mike allows him to stay at the Brady's. And then things start getting a little weird. Jan asks her so-called dad if she can sit on his lap.
Can I sit on your lap?
What? Oh, well, you sure did grow since Daddy's been away.
And then we pivot to Marsha and Greg moving into their bedroom together in the attic, and he sees Marsha changing and gets turned on, and vice versa. Oh my god. The sexual tension in this movie between family members, what is going on? What is the message of this movie? Apparently though, it's the realization that they're not brother and sister.
We're not brother and sister?
Which they're technically not either with Mike and Carol, but for the first time since probably most of them can remember, there's a new dad in the house. Listen, it's not the best reason for now being attracted to your stepbrother or stepsister, so honestly, at least there's some explanation to this incest madness. Even if it's not the best reason to be attracted to your stepsister who you grew up with, or even worse, realizing you're attracted to your stepsister you grew up with. Yikes. But just like how these films go, this is referencing again the tension that audience members thought Greg and Marsha had in their original series. And also, they apparently had dated off camera in real life. However, as the film goes on, it kind of gets increasingly more awkward.
She'll never have half as much pep as you.
Like, it's funny at first, but then it's a little played out and just downright weird. The problem I have with this film is that it kind of comes off almost as fan fiction. Like, here's some dude's wet dream of Marsha and Greg doing a thing while Carol gets bamboozled by some fake ex-husband. While I really wanted to laugh with this one, I found myself more laughing at it. I think I'd rather see Chucky Jan than Greg and Marsha as a couple, but I guess that's what the writers were going for in this one, so let's just go with it. There's even a scene where we're really getting into the depths of Greg's stepsister love conflict. One scene, he's casually checking out a blonde girl at the pool, to which he approaches her and realizes it's Marsha. Yikes. Maybe he's the one who needs advice from RuPaul, who makes another cameo in this movie to give Jan some more advice.
You have to be true to yourself, Jan.
Which, you know what? She needs it in this one too. Because while she isn't fantasizing about cutting off Marsha's hair anymore, she's bringing a life-size doll to a cafe and claiming it's her boyfriend named George Glass. So now, not only do we have borderline incest, but we have object sexualization. I know this is supposed to be satirical and all that, but some of the plot lines are taken a bit too far. I mean, the romantic conflicts are unsettling to say the least. Marsha with her stepbrother Greg, and Jan with a life-size doll, and Carol with her ex. By the end of it though, the tension is broken and Marsha and Greg share their kiss. It's a build-up for sure, but is it rewarding? That I can't say it is. They ultimately at least understand it's a bit weird.
I gotta go.
But to have gotten to that place, I don't know, I guess weirder things have happened in the 90s. At least this chaos is broken up a bit with the musical number Time to Change. I totally forgot how much I used to replay this scene and song when I was a kid. I swear, the past few days I've been going for jogs listening to Time to Change. How embarrassing. Anyway, the main plot goes back to the whole horse statue conflict, and Roy kidnaps Carol to Hawaii, where he is to sell the horse for $20 million. Damn, the stakes are higher than a $20,000 for the Brady's house. To think this statue is worth more than that Brady house. And on their way to Hawaii, we're gifted with probably the best scene in this movie. Like, this is what I want to see in a musical, where delusional families are singing and dancing to all the passengers on an airplane. And the best part is that no one has cell phones yet, so they're forced to watch this family and can't even post it on TikTok. Kids, this was free entertainment in the 90s, okay? Families caroling on airplanes. God, I miss those days. In typical Brady fashion, we do get a happy ending and the family is back together again. Well, somewhat. Mike and Carol are renewing their vows, to then which Mike's first wife comes out of the woodworks and is revealed to be I Dream of Jeannie. I gasped when I saw this because not only did I forget it when I watched it as a kid, but it's so random. What is I Dream of Jeannie doing in this? I know that, you know, they're both classics, I Dream of Jeannie and The Brady Bunch, but there is no similar premise or crossover whatsoever. I love the randomness of the Brady Bunch movies, whether it be Jan cutting off Marsha's hair, RuPaul telling Jan to work it, Rosie O'Donnell making an appearance, etc., etc. To wrap up these two classics that one may now consider hidden gems, I'm going to be adding this to my watch list more than once every 20 years. What makes the Bradys so fun to watch, whether it's the original series or these movies, is is that they're just this wholesome, innocent family that is too good for this world. We need more Bradys in the 2020s. I'm not opposed to a new reboot where we have the 90s version of Brady's stuck in the 20s. Now that would be different. Long live the Brady Bunch.